Now, the suggestion that Australian officials at sea handed over cash to a people smuggling crew has been around for several days now, and the government's doing nothing to stomp it down. The asylum seekers who were stopped at sea by an Australian Border Protection ship say they saw money being paid. The Indonesian government is anxious for details, and so are the Australian government's political opponents at home. Labor's asking for an Auditor-General's investigation, and the Greens want federal police to look into it. But for its part, the government maintains it'll never confirm or deny on water activities.
I think the questions need to be about whether or not the Prime Minister of Australia had knowledge or was involved in the paying of bribes to people smugglers.
I hold CCO1.
I think the Australian public would be shocked to think that their money is being used to pay people smugglers would be an extraordinary indictment of the lack of morality of this government.
Some people have made some unfounded allegations, to the best of my knowledge, and it's not the first time that's happened in this space.
The Prime Minister says he's got a mandate to stop the boats. Well, he doesn't have a mandate to break the law, and he doesn't have a mandate for handing out big wads of cash out on the ocean.
People need to know that this is happening, and if it is, this government needs to resign.
I have every confidence in the officers to have been doing things lawfully and consistent with government policy.
If we can't get answers from the Prime Minister, ask the Auditor-General to conduct an investigation, and the government should fully cooperate with that investigation.
If you arrive by boat without a visa, you will be sent to another country.
No, I just met the ambassador just now in the room. So I make use of the opportunity to talk to him directly, because we are really concerned if it is confirmed.
Any vessel leaving Indonesia won't be coming to Australia. And if it's come from Indonesia, well, if people don't want the boats to be turned back, don't let them leave Indonesia.
And all we're asking for is a clear response from the Prime Minister of Australia about what on earth is going on.
So no one's been able to establish whether money was paid or not, but some ministers seem prepared to rule out particular officers. We just heard Scott Morrison express confidence that the Operation Sovereign Borders team had acted lawfully, his words. Questions have been directed also towards the Foreign Minister to see whether Australia's overseas spies might have made payments. We haven't heard from Julie Bishop yet in response. But when the Defence Minister was asked whether his people make payments, he appears to have put them in the clear.
I'm not commenting at all upon the matters that have been in the media. I'm simply saying that as a matter of policy, we do not comment on operational matters, and one of the reasons we don't comment on operational matters is we're not going to telegraph anything we may or may not be doing to the people smugglers.
Are payments of this type legal?
There's an assumption in your question that payments are being made, and I'm not commenting on that.
If payments are being made, are they? Or is it possible for Defence Force personnel to offer payments?
As far as I'm aware, this is not arising in relation to Defence Force personnel. As to the legality of what's being alleged, that would be a matter for the Attorney-General.
Attorney-General, is it illegal for Australian officials to pay cash to people smugglers?
Are you satisfied that citizenship law will pass the challenge in the High Court?
The Defence Minister said it's a matter for
Sorry, one at a time, please. What was your question, sorry?
The Immigration Minister said it's a matter for you to answer whether it would be illegal to pay asylum seekers. What's your understanding?
Well, I don't believe that has occurred. So the question is academic.
Is it illegal?
Now we'll see what question time and the rest of the day brings on that issue. But an 800-year-old document that went on to form the basis of many Western democracies is being celebrated in grand style today. Tony Abbott and Bill Shorten have both shared the stage to note the anniversary of Magna Carta, which enshrined the idea that all are equal before the law.
Some of this in this Parliament are eager for smaller government, lower taxes and greater freedom. Others yearn for more equality and fairness. Yet all of us, regardless of the particular political tradition which we represent, respect the values and the institutions on which our polity rests and which have so steadfastly stood the test of time. Today, we acknowledge a grand tradition of which we are today's custodians, and we pledge to build on this magnificent legacy.
On its 800th birthday, we salute the Magna Carta as a flickering candle, a compass, a guiding star, the true beginning of rights and liberties. None of them given lightly, every one hard fought for, down the generations and around our world. And we must continue to fight for these freedoms because they can be lost much more easily than won. By the Magna Carta's light and its words, its defiance and its gift of hope, we see the way. Long may it reign.
Now, as Human Rights Commissioner, Tim Wilson has the official duty of explaining the Great Charter and its relevance to modern ways of governing. We've asked him how current policies on terrorism and border security sit with the 800-year tradition. Well, Tim Wilson, just in case anyone would think that 800 years of Magna Carta is just an occasion for lawyers or for politicians, you've been at an event this morning where a school student tried to relate it to modern day with a simple question asking, if all were equal, why are we stopping the boats? How do you answer that with one eye on the Magna Carta and one on today's policies?
Well, today is the 800th anniversary of Magna Carta and reminds us how important these basic political principles are that inform the development of our liberal democracy, the importance of the rule of law, and how much that underpins the operations of our society. And so, of course, policies like Stop the Boats have to be enacted in law to be able to make sure that they have validity and a sense of justice behind them. But there are many other examples, including the role of citizenship and how much rights and citizenship have a relationship, as well as a sense of fairness and justice in the system so that we assess people who get asylum based on their need rather than being based on the mechanism that they arrive.
We'll talk about the citizenship model in a moment, but is there anything that implies equality but as against Australian and Indonesian, or Australian and a would-be asylum seeker?
Well, of course, we have a sovereign country and we get to decide the laws within our sovereign nation and the basis in which people arrive. And that, of course, flows on to issues around immigration, and that's all established in law. And that's the legacy of Magna Carta, the idea that the government is restrained by law and that it has to make its case from the consenting people around different aspects of law.
Which does bring us to citizenship and some suggestions that the stripping of dual citizens' nationality when they're a terrorist or suspected to be one may be open to appeal, even unconstitutional is the suggestion. Of what we know that might be contained in that bill, is there anything there that strikes you as potentially unconstitutional?
Well, I think it's very hard to make a judgment until you actually see the final bill. But what we do know is people are raising concerns about the mechanism and the basis in which a citizen can be stripped of their citizenship. In addition to that, that may have consequences in terms of voting rights and participation in the rest of society. And so the High Court has made decisions in the past about the necessary measures or precautions taken before somebody's citizenship is stripped, and these issues are being discussed. But I don't think anybody disputes the fundamental principle that we have to deal with the challenge of foreign fighters and make sure that we protect Australia and Australians. The question is making sure there's proper oversight, due process and the application, the rule of law, while that's still being done.
But even then, there's great risk, isn't there, that the government could fall foul of that rule of law, particularly on technical things like the minister's discretion, how that was used. So it's at least an open question at this stage, isn't it?
Well, until we see the final proposal, of course it's an open question, but I think what we've seen in the past week, 2 weeks, is people giving feedback directly to the government and through public media about what happens if you don't have proper due process, the proper application of law, and also a full reviewable process by the courts, not just of procedural matters, but also about the validity of somebody being stripped of their citizenship. And so you'd hope the government is taking that into account for the final proposal we'll see this week.
Yes, well, we're told we will see it before too long, although it's still being drafted as we understand it. Now, also applying principles, I suppose, of equality that stem from Magna Carta. The same-sex marriage debate is supposed to resume in Parliament today. You've recently been proposing a sort of a market-based mechanism of hierarchy and different models of marriage. Do you think that as we get closer towards a vote in this Parliament, we're going to drift away from a simple proposition, a yes-no same-sex marriage idea, into other alternatives?
Well, I think that's what we're seeing right now. The big shift in the discussion and the marriage debate is in the past it's been whether or not we'll allow same-sex couples to marry. Now the discussion is what the model is. I consider that huge progress in terms of implementing those basic principles, again, of equality before the law. But what some people are raising is a prospect that government get completely out of marriage. Others are saying just amend the existing Marriage Act so that the civil institution is between two people and not a man and a woman. I think there are other options out there, and in fact I've proposed one in the past talking about how you establish a separate but equal institution of civil and religious marriage, which is effectively treated the same in law, which respects religious freedom, which is a very important part of this discussion, while also preserving and protecting the basic principles of equality before the law for all Australians.
But for those who support it, the abundance now of different alternatives and different options could actually be a problem, couldn't it? If you look at the Republic referendum, once multiple alternatives come on the table, it can muddy the waters, if you like, from the original point of the debate.
Well, that's why you have to go back to principles. I mean, that's the great lesson of Magna Carta and its significance today, is when you develop public policy and law from those foundational principles like equality before the law, while preserving religious freedom, you can come up with solutions which I think make a pathway forward that respect everybody. Yes, there may be some complications and not everybody's going to love every model to the full extent, but I think it is very significant that we are at a point now where we're discussing the different models, and I think it's a good thing. That's one of the key reasons I'm an advocate for free speech. It's through robust discussion and respectful discussion that you get to the bottom of what is a solution that we can, that everybody can broadly accept, that has a consensus behind it, and can move our country forward together as a united nation.
All right, Tim Wilson, thank you.
A pleasure.
Now, at around the time that we were talking to Tim Wilson as Commissioner there, the House of Representatives did briefly resume debate on the Bill Shorten Private Members Bill to allow for same-sex marriage. Tanya Plibersek, as co-sponsor, has seconded Mr Shorten's bill, and one government MP, Philip Ruddock, has spoken in reply.
It is time, it is well past time, that this Parliament says to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender and intersex Australians, we recognise that you love, and that's more important than who you love. So to paraphrase William Shakespeare, let us not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments.
It seems to me that this matter is being addressed in a political context, not in a context of good faith, where those who have a strong view in favour of these matters might be able to play a part in helping to settle the form that legislation might ultimately take and garner broader support for it. It is extremely disappointing to me and my colleagues that the opposition took the approach that they did, and we would encourage them to withdraw and to allow some further discussions with those who have an interest in these questions to see whether there is a meaningful way forward which can be pursued with a degree of cross-party support.
Now, politics is often said to be a grubby business, but the same can't be said of the building where it's practiced. Parliament House is immaculately cleaned, maintained, mowed and presented all year round. Well, the cleaners responsible were honoured outside the House today in an event that doubled as a celebration of the 25th International Cleaners Day and also a protest against pay and conditions. Several politicians took up a broom in moral support for those who clean their offices.
Put your hand on this.
Hand on that. What the hell is
I
that?
could get really rude there, but I won't.
No, don't do that.
The protest and the union organising it bestowed its Golden Toilet Brush Award. Apparently, it was a tough decision this year.
This year, could we go back to the PM again? Could we maybe Senator Abetz remove the guidelines at cutting people's wages? What do you do, you know? But in the end, it was Joe Hockey, really, who over this last little while showed a complete disconnect between people. So I would really love Joe, call on Joe to come and collect his award. We understand in his many homes across the country there are many bathrooms, many toilets that need cleaning. We're sure that he'll put that to excellent use.
Well, there will be some heavy cleaning here on Thursday after Parliament holds its annual midwinter ball. Now, a number of politicians have offered themselves for charity auction, mainly in dinner experiences this year. The Foreign Minister, Julie Bishop, offers dinner with actor Hugh Jackman and his wife, Deborah Lee Furness. That'll be held in New York. And just to update you on some of the figures, bids for that experience are already up above $23,000. That's to go to New York and have that dinner. That's with 2 days to go. But we can also tell you that in contrast, the opportunity to have dinner with Bill Shorten and Chris Bowen when we checked the online bidding process this morning amounted to 0 bids. So no value in that just at this point of time. But 2 days to go nevertheless.